Hello, YouTubers. I want to welcome you to another edition of Bargain Bin Amps, and I'm your host, guitarist Denis Taaffe, and I'm in my home studio. Now, fairly recently, I had gotten a Marshall MX212A 2x12 cabinet with two Celestion 7080 speakers, which I personally like for clean sounds. And if you subscribe and followed the series, I did a video on the Celestion 7080 speaker. In any case, when you compare the price of 2x12 cabinets, right, you'll find that the Marshall MX212A is a very inexpensive kind of MDF cabinet, and especially used can be found really, really inexpensively. I mean, half the cost of a new one, and I think a new one is in the $500 range, somewhere in there. Okay, and mind you, I like to play in stereo, so for me, I really wanted two of them, right? But wasn't willing to spend the money on a new one. You know. However, a used one did show up here, so I decided I'm going to try this and see how it goes. And it's arrived. Now we're going to have an internet first here, again, right? And that is an official unboxing without the box. What? Yes, please, let me explain. Unfortunately, when it arrived, the box was huge. I mean, freaking huge. I think it held, like, drums. You know, so the big, big box. You know, and I think it came from Arizona or something. So, unfortunately, I couldn't bring the box inside the house, you know. But I wanted to get it inside, you know. So we can take a look at that here. Okay, so here it is. Here's the cab. You can see the outline of it. Now look at that mound of bubble wrap. So give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and unwrap that. Okay, there we go. Here it is, the Marshall cab. And it's pretty close to new. It has one defect. I don't know if you can see it here. Yeah, right there. You see that? Yeah, so in the grill cloth it does have a little imperfection, but for me, not that big a deal, especially for, you know, the price that it was. Definitely well worthwhile. Alright. Very nice. That's the only imperfection I see is in the grill cloth here. Yeah. Okay, now I wanted to compare this big 2x12 cabinet, and two of them in particular, compared to little 10-inch speakers that are found in the little Super Champ X2. So we can take a look at that here. Okay, so right now I've got a loop going through two Fender Super Champ X2 15-watt tube amps. Let's take a listen to it. What you're hearing here is the Fender Super Champ X2s with 10-inch speakers. One's a Weber and one's a Cannabis Rex, 10-inch speakers. So it kind of fills up the room, but let's try the Marshalls. Okay, now here's the two Marshalls. And they're running, each cabinet has two 7080 speakers, Celestions. Much bigger sound fills the room really well. And finally, I wanted to just play through them and see what I thought. And we can take a look at that here. So here, I'm gonna play just Fender X2s, and before that I have the Eventide H9, going into the X2s and then to the two Marshall 2x12 cabinets. And let's take a listen to that. Playing the little bootlicker guitar, the bootlegger travel guitar, and it's kind of bright, and the tone controls have a lot to change the sound, you know. I mean, if I put the tone control down a bit, you get that kind of... So if I turn it all the way down, you get that kind of... I'm on the neck pickup here. So. So that's basically the sound of the Marshall cabinets. Having two of them is essentially kind of like playing through a 4x12. And you get a really big sound, you know. So one thing I find right away is just it has this kind of smoothness to it. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's very smooth and kind of spongy. Listen, I had gotten a 4x12 cabinet and just loved the sound of it, but it's not very practical and takes up a ton of space and those kinds of things, and are very heavy and those kinds of things. So 2x12 was kind of a compromise, really. And two 2x12s, and theoretically you'd be playing through a 4x12, right? Yeah, kind of. You know, I don't think you get quite the bass response that you would out of a 4x12, quite frankly. However, one thing I did notice is that you can take a little 15-watt tiny little combo amp, run it through a 2x12 cabinet, and the sound becomes huge, as if you're playing through a really big amp, you know. So it's quite worthwhile in that sense. Okay, here are my thoughts on the Marshall 2x12 cabinet. One, especially used, it's a really great deal, price-wise. Not a super expensive cabinet at all. However, it's definitely sounds really, really good. Especially for a, MDF cabinet, particle board, what have you. It's still quite sturdy. Now, compared to a birch plywood cabinet, birch ply, like the seismic audio, it doesn't have much resonance. Okay? However, what it does have is, especially with those Celestion 7080 speakers, right, is a kind of a smoothness to it that I don't find in other cabinets. It definitely fills up the room really, really well. The 7080 speaker, I think, is very good on clean sounds, just so on high gain sounds. But for me, I just basically use it for clean. I do find can get a little bright. Okay. And as far as power handling, it's like 160 watts. They say. Really, it's probably about 140, 150 watts. So for my little 15 watt Super Champ X2s, it's no problem at all as far as power handling. Now, one thing, so basically I really like the smoothness of it, of that kind of a 2x12 cabinet. And it's definitely a different sound than a birch cabinet, without a doubt. It's not bad sounding at all. It's not that. It's just a different kind of sound. It's more neutral, if that's even, hard to describe audio-wise. Then there's the size. And this I really, really like. They're not all that terribly heavy. And they have those side handles. Very compact, really. And you can move these anywhere without a problem and still get a really huge sound, it wouldn't be much of a struggle, let's put it that way. Now if these were 412s, I'd be very much concerned, But at the 212, two 12-inch speakers, it's fine in that way. So that I really like about it too. And for me, I like the 7080 speaker, believe it or not, for clean sounds. I think it's definitely made for that. It's got a very hi-fi kind of sounding speaker in the sense that it has, just like you would find on a stereo speaker, can have a lot of bass and a lot of highs. Now, given that, you could definitely swap out the speakers with, let's say, a Cannabis Rex speaker or something like that. Or creamback speaker, or even greenback speakers for that matter. So that's always a possibility, And the fact that it's a vertical cabinet really makes a big difference, space-wise. And as far as the bass goes, I don't think it has as much bass as like the seismic birch cabinet. but it's it's a very, very smooth sound that you don't get from the side of it. So it's kind of a trade-off, really. Anyway, they look really good. Definitely the price is right. I'd highly recommend them. I don't think there's a issue there. You could always put in, your favorite speaker, whatever that is. There's one thing, and this is for some reason, on these, sometimes from the factory, the polarity on the speakers is wired up wrong. Now, what is that about? That would definitely cause phasing issues, lack of bass, and so on and so on. So that's definitely something to check. And it's usually that the bottom speaker, right, the positive and negative aren't wired correctly, right? And if you switch them, you get a much better sound, So that's definitely something to check. A great way to get a really big sound, out of a small cabinet. So who knows, maybe I'll replace the speakers at some point. Maybe not, just depends. One thing to remember, these are 8-ohm cabinets, which means that the speakers themselves are 16 ohm. Both are 16 ohm, okay? So if you do replace the speakers, you want to get 16 ohm speakers and not 8 ohm, because the two speakers together make 8 ohms, right? At least the way that these are wired presently. Now obviously, I've read where, they won't hold up and things, if you throw them down a flight of stairs, or if they fall out of the back of a van, or, just stupid stuff, really. But really, I think, definitely, for home use, studio use, and the occasional gig here and there, I think these are just fine. I guess we could get into a whole discussion about, cabinet construction and those kinds of things, So, and the Tolex on there is really some pretty strong stuff I've discovered. It's pretty good. Pretty good. So definitely well worthwhile. When you think of what cabinets are going for these days, in a way it's a real bargain, especially used. It's a really great sound. Really. Very, very nice, Not what I expected at all, I expected it to be really harsh, and it's not the case at all. It's actually a very sophisticated sound in the sense that it's very smooth, has that smoothness to it, which I wouldn't have expected at all. Anyway, so there you go. There's the Marshall MX212A speaker. You can buy a new one, and it's the AR, and I don't think there's a bit of difference. So I don't know what the difference is there with the R there. All right, very good. See you next time. Bye.